Hello Kearns High School, and welcome to today's Math Self-Start. Today we're going to be talking about basic multiplication. What is multiplication? Well, simply stated, it's just a form of repeated addition. 2 plus 2 plus 2, or 3 plus 3 plus 3. Now, why do we use repeated addition? Well, think of it this way. Let's say you have a whole bunch of Skittles and you want to know how many that you've got. Well, it might take a while to count them all up individually, but if you put them into groups, then it's a faster way of getting the total number of Skittles. So let's talk about multiples, because multiples are an important part of multiplication. If I count by ones, the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on are all multiples of 1. If I count by fives, the numbers 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and so on are all multiples of 5. Now, if you've ever played the game Yahtzee, then you have used multiples. If we take a look at the scorecard, we'll see that we get points for rolling certain numbers. Now, if we want to, let's say for instance we roll 3 ones. So 3 ones, I would put in a score of 3. Let's say I roll 3 fours. So let's say 2 fours. 2 fours, I'd put in a score of 8. Now, if you roll 5 fives, or 4 fives even, you could put your score up here at the top, but you would get bonus points if you put it down on bottom. But at any rate, you're using multiples when you play the game Yahtzee. So let's practice. Go ahead and name the first 10 multiples of 3. Pause the video to give yourself some time to complete the exercise. How did you do? Where do we see multiples? Well, probably the place you've seen them most often is in a multiplication table. So we learned about the multiplication tables in elementary school, and we've used them ever since. Take for instance 0 multiples of 7. 0 multiples of 7 is 0. But the 4th multiple of 7 is 28. The 8th multiple of 7 is 56. And the 12th multiple of 7 is 84. So the multiplication table is just a handy way of keeping track of all of our multiples. And by memorizing these numbers, it makes life in math a lot easier. So now let's talk briefly about multiplying integers. Remember them? Let's take a look at this first example. We have 4 multiplied by 2. So 4 times 2 is just another way of saying 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. So 2 added to itself 4 times. On the number line, we would just count by 2's. 2, 4, 6, 8. So 4 times 2 is 8. Another way of looking at that is to say that 4 times 2 is the same as 4 groups of 2. And if you count up everything in all of your groups, you end up with 8 as well. But what happens if we multiply a negative 4 by 2? Well, negative 4 is the same thing as opposite 4. So when we multiply a negative 4 by 2, we don't have 4 groups, we have 4 opposite groups. And the 4 opposite groups look like this. When you count up everything in your 4 opposite groups, you get the number negative 8. So let's talk about the rules when multiplying integers with the same signs. Integers that have the same, when you multiply integers with the same signs, you end up with a positive result. Positive times positive equals positive, and negative times negative equals positive. So let's practice. Pause the video to give yourself some time to complete the exercises. Now let's talk about multiplying integers with opposite signs. When you multiply integers with opposite signs, you get a negative result. Positive times negative equals negative, and negative times positive equals negative. So let's practice some more. Pause the video to give yourself some time. one thing I like to use when trying to remember when my answer will be positive or negative is this little visual guide. So it's a triangle that has two negative symbols at the bottom in the bottom corners and a positive symbol at the top. Now, if I'm trying to remember what my answer is when I multiply two negative numbers together, I just cover my negative symbols. So negative times negative leaves positive. If I'm trying to remember what a negative times a positive makes, I simply cover the negative and the positive, and that leaves negative. And then again, if I want to know what a positive times negative makes, I just cover my positive and my negative. Positive times negative makes negative. So that's just a handy way of kind of keeping track of when your answer will be positive or negative. So we've got 4 final practice problems. Pause the video to give yourself some time to complete the exercises. I hope you've enjoyed today's Math Self-Start. We'll see you next time.